It's time for AMD earnings. George Tsilis, senior markets correspondent, joins us to break down those numbers. And George, based on the stock reaction, I mean, the stock was already up 4.5% heading into the close. There was optimism. The bar was pretty low for AMD. And it seems like that positive momentum is continuing following this report. Break it down for us.
Yeah, so I don't have the earnings out yet. At least I don't see them, Caroline. So if you've got them out, just let me know what you see. But I can go ahead.
So $7.66 billion on revenue, George. And then in terms of EPS, I'm seeing Q4 adjusted EPS of $1.09. In terms of the Q1 outlook, adjusted gross margins of 54%. The expectation was for 54.25%, according to IBIS. So it could be a slight miss in terms of the expectations for the gross margins for the first quarter. But it looks like a beat on both the top and bottom line.
Yeah, so right away, I mean, looking at gross margins, the reason they're focusing right now on gross margins, Caroline, is because everyone wants to know what the pricing power of their MI300 chips are. Again, that's the mainstay competitors to NVIDIA's GPU technology. So that slight miss is obviously going to cause some sell-off as a result. But overall, the EPS coming in line at $1.09 was about 41% compared to the same quarter last year. So if you consider, again, what the outlook is, this is what's important for AMD. And I mean, this is where everyone's going to be looking at, because one of the things about AMD itself is in the past year with the stock down about 32% is the earnings estimates keep getting pushed out further in time. In other words, they seem to be moving to the downside. But the thing about it is, if you look at the stock, it's been trading pretty listless to the downside since February of last year. So, you know, I was looking for potentially an inflection quarter in AMD under the assumptions that their guidance is firm relative to estimates. And perhaps even if estimates for EPS come in a little bit lower than previously expected, this one might also get a pass, considering right now, just based on what I have at the midpoint going forward into this year for fiscal year 25 at $4.89. Stock is trading. That's a rather cheap multiple, around 23 times 2025's earnings, and the earnings estimated growth is expected to be around 47%.
Well, I don't have the Q1 estimate yet, but I do have the Q1 for EPS, but I do have the Q1 revenue estimate or outlook for $7.1 billion plus or minus $300 million. So it looks like analysts were expecting right around $7 billion. So I guess minus $300 million would actually fall short of that.
Yeah.
But Wall Street largely looking at, giving a pass for that guidance as well, based on the fact that we are still seeing shares higher in the after hours.
Yeah, overall, I mean, if you look at how it traded today, it was actually quite a nice move to the upside. And I think what it comes down to is there may be a valuation inflection point here in AMD. It's too soon to tell. I mean, through of course the data that's going to come in, I can give a little bit more of a concrete synopsis of what's happening here. But nonetheless, looking at the revenue, again, guidance at 30% year over year, it's coming in slightly higher than the previous estimates by about $100 million. This is, again, plus or minus $300 million, so they're giving us a pretty wide variance to that degree. But again, the gross margin estimates are around 54%, which is pretty much where it was in the past 12 months or 4 quarters. A little bit of a miss last quarter, but it may be based upon the inability. This is why things can change quite drastically between now and, let's say, even 10 minutes from now or even before the conference call. Things can change based upon the supply abilities for AMD to produce their chips. We know that there has been weakness across the CPU and the embedded chips, particularly their field programmable chips through their Xilinx acquisition. A lot of that has to come from the automotive markets. The CPU markets have been pretty listless, mid-single digits. So estimates that I have right now expected to be around $7 billion in artificial intelligence sales for fiscal year 2025, relative to about $32 billion in total sales. Again, this is previous to today's announcement.
Okay, and I will just note, we have to go, but we are seeing those early gains kind of dissolve, and I think that has to do with the fact that
Yeah.
Q4 data center revenue coming in at 3.9 billion is a miss. I mean, Wall Street was looking for more like 4.14 billion. So the data center revenue we know is key. We keep hoping that AMD will come out and say that they're going to give NVIDIA more of a run for their money, and it doesn't seem to be the case in terms of that data center revenue right now. So we'll definitely explore that more tomorrow after the earnings call. George, thanks so much for helping me go through these numbers.